Hi, I'm Heather Erb, and this is Shine.fm's Momcast. Thanks for tuning in today. David Dunn, one of our artists off of Tooth and Nail Records and BEC Recordings. He has a brand new album out now. It's called Yellow Balloons, and let's hear from him about that latest album.
Sure. So when I do a project, an album, in general, you're when you're listening to the record, you're actually getting like a snapshot into my existence for some time period, right? So, Yellow Balloons, you're actually getting a kind of a peek into my life for basically the last 2 years. The majority of the record is inspired in some way, shape, or form by kind of a tragic thing that happened to my family almost exactly 2 years ago now, actually. Very long story, but the end is that when I was back in Midland, I was actually playing a show, which is kind of a crazy God thing to begin with. But my 2-year-old niece went down for a nap while I was there and didn't wake up from the nap. And so we don't really have any scientific explanation for why it happened. It just did. I have 5 brothers and sisters, and they all live in Midland, and I'm very, very close with everybody there. So it's been very difficult across the board for the Dunn fam. Nothing like this has really ever happened to us at this point. So the majority of the record, Yellow Balloons, is about it's really just my mind and heart of both kind of those were the things that were weighing on me, and so most of the songs stemmed from really that occurrence. The reason it's called Yellow Balloons, there's a title track, right? One of the songs is actually called Yellow Balloons, but yellow balloons are actually the thing that you traditionally let go at a child's memorial service. So that's the reason that the record is actually called Yellow Balloons. So.
Well, let's talk about I Want to Go Back. I think it's a song that we have heard from some listeners, and even my 10-year-old son, David, so you're reaching little 10-year-old boys. He says, I like that song because it reminds me that Jesus loves me, and it reminds me that it's simple. And I think that's kind of obviously the basics of the song if you listen to the lyrics, but talk about writing that song and how it resonated with you and what came out of it for you.
Sure. Want to Go Back is me thinking about little kids. Not telling you the story about Mariah, my 2-year-old niece who passed away. So it was a product of me thinking about kids. There's a lot of songs on the record actually about little kids. And this one specifically was me pondering the way that we speak about children, right, as opposed to the way that Jesus spoke about children. Me, when I tend to speak about kids, it's mostly in derogatory terms, right? I tend to tell people to stop acting like kids, right? That's like somebody's picking their nose and you say, hey, stop picking your nose, you're acting like a kid, something like that, right? Jesus in the Bible is overwhelmingly positive in his language when he's speaking about kids, so much so that he mostly encourages us to be more like children, not less like them, right? Especially when it comes to things like faith. We're supposed to have faith like a kid. And so I want to go back as me trying to figure out what the difference between kid me and grown-up me is when it comes to faith. And here's what I think I came to. When I was a kid, really the only 2 things that mattered to me when it came to Jesus were that he was, right, that he existed, and number 2, that he loved me. And that was it, right? That was it. And then I grew up, and Jesus became more like a theological mountain that I had to climb rather than a simple concept, right? It was this ornate, crazy to understand theoretical knowledge of this person. And while I think those things are important, they're not the thing that I should value the most. The thing that I should value the most is that he is, right, that he exists, and that he loves me. And so I want to go back as a reminder that those are the things that I want to value the most.
So let's talk about Ruins. That was a song that as I listened to the album, and coming from where you just, shared with us about the story, but I think the message that came out of it for me is anyone going through a difficult time and you kind of look at the situation you're in and you can't really see that the pieces of the ruins are what could bring you out of the ruins. And that's kind of what I got out of that song. Talk about when you wrote that song and how that whole thought came about, that when we're in the midst of ruins, how those pieces could be put together that, could bring us out of that.
Yeah. If I'm going to be honest with you, Ruins is, nobody's asked me about this song yet, by the way, so thanks for asking about it. Ruins is me attempting to convince myself that what happened was okay. And I believe it to be true, right? I know with my head that that's the case, is that even though our lives feel like they have just crumbled to pieces, right, which is what the song is about, that God is the master builder, right? And oftentimes, without our lives crumbling to pieces, He is unable to construct a thing that's bigger, better for us. So I would say that song was really a product of kind of the grieving process for me. I would say that was me perpetually trying to convince myself of the fact that I know that He's working all things for the good of those who love Him. Right? I know that to be factual, and the song was me trying to convince myself that was still the case. And I know it is. It just doesn't feel that way.
Well, I feel like there's kind of this sense throughout the whole album of there's a theme of, God redeeming the bad, which obviously is where you were at and where you guys have been at, because you have to, when you walk through, I imagine, I've never walked through that type of loss before, but I've had losses. When you walk through that, you have to, the hope that you hold on to some days is that God can redeem the situation, that there will be good, that there's something that God will work out. And I get that sense throughout the whole album that almost every single song that I listen to has some sort of theme in there. Like, you can, even though this happened, you can bring good out of it. Even though this is a horrible situation, you can. Can you look back on the album now and kind of see that theme and you working out some of that stuff throughout it?
Yeah, I know that to be true, and Ruins is that way, right? I know that's the case. I don't know if that was necessarily intentional. I know that that's the case. I feel like with most of the songs I was composing, the way that I was that I know that is how God is, right? It's that God is able to use things that seem tragic to actually be for the good, and He does. That is what He does. It's not the way it feels, and it's difficult to see from that perspective, right? And I would say that a lot of the record is more of that, is because that's the place that I was when I was writing, and to be honest with you, still am. Is that it's very difficult to see from a heavenly perspective, to see from God's view how this could possibly be a positive thing. When an 80-year-old dies, it's really easy to go, we'll celebrate his life, right? And here's why this is an easy thing to look at from God's perspective and see it great. A 60-year-old happens to die, and you do the same thing. Even a 20-year-old, you can do that. When a 2-year-old dies, she's a year and a half into cognizance, right? To knowing that she's alive and there's my people around me. She's a handful of words, and it's very, very difficult to put a spin on that, to go, here's what God is doing in this. Right? It's beyond understanding. And so I know with my brain that Ruins is true, right? I know that that's what God does. That doesn't make any sense to me, and I am having to beat myself over the head with truth, is what I would say.
Right. Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah, I get it. Well, let's take a little turn here, and I don't know, you might not want to talk about this, and that's fine. We don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. But I did in my research and kind of learning a little bit more about you. You happen to be on season 2 of The Voice. Tell me a little bit about that experience. I think I was a watcher during that time. I'm not a watcher now, to be honest with you, but I think I actually watched the show. What was that experience like?
The Voice was really fun. It was a very, very fun experience. It's funny people ask me about that still because it was really kind of a blip on my radar.
Yeah, right.
It was. I think they're on season 14 or something crazy like that now, and I was on season 2, so it was a very long time ago. But it was great. It was literally like. It was like a month and a half of my life, something like that I spent in L.A. filming and singing and hanging out with a bunch of really cool people. So it was highly, highly enjoyable. I mean, I got kicked off basically immediately, right? But they told my story, and throughout the season there was a couple of times that they mentioned my appearance because there was some fun little tidbits about my story that was similar to Adam's story, and so it was fun. I loved it. It was really, really fun.
Who was your coach?
Oh no, I got kicked off before that.
You got kicked off.
I got kicked off during the blinds, right? So I sang my song, Nobody Hit the Button.
Get out! Really?
100% the case. Yeah, no button for me.
Oh, wow. See, I was singing, and I couldn't, that's funny that you would say that, because I couldn't find any video of it, like on YouTube or anything, and I thought, well, that's weird, maybe just because it was so long ago, but you're like, oh, no. So, okay, let's talk about that. So
they actually take it down, so you can't find it, because anytime somebody will put it up, anybody's voice performance, they'll take it down for, like, copyright infringement.
Oh, okay.
So if you keep looking, they keep putting it up over and over again. So even still now, somebody will put it back up, and it'll be up for a couple of days, and they'll take it back down. So that'll happen. If you really want to see it, you just need to keep checking for a couple of weeks, and it'll pop up at some point.
So, you probably must feel like, yeah, whatever. God had a different plan, right?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't feel like that at the time. At the time, I wanted to win the show. But
Right.
Now, in hindsight, I think it was probably a good thing that I didn't win the show.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's talk about some kind of fun things about you, David. You're on the road right now. You're visiting some radio stations, and what's a favorite food that you have that, like, maybe just recently you discovered, or maybe just something you've always loved?
If we're talking about type of food, I can tell you. How about if I just tell you some weird things that I like and dislike? I think
sure,
that's great. Probably my favorite thing to eat in the world. I'm going to think about this before I say it. Yes, I'm confident that this is correct. My favorite thing to eat in the world is black licorice.
Oh, really? Oh, I can't stand black licorice.
Love black licorice. And I'm also convinced that whether or not you love or hate black licorice, actually it's just people who love it. People who love black licorice, I think it's genetic.
You think it's genetic?
Everybody in my family loves licorice except for my dad. So my mother and all of my siblings and all of the grandbabies.
Oh, my goodness.
All of them love licorice. And everybody who married into my family, all of my brothers and sisters-in-law, hate licorice. And my dad hates licorice. So I think it's my mother's gene. And that's why I'm convinced that it's now genetic. But that's my favorite thing to eat. But here's where this is usually where I get in trouble. I'm going to tell you anyway because we're sitting here talking about food. I do not like chocolate, Mexican food, or bacon.
Bacon? Really, David? Bacon. Are you kidding me?
I know. I don't know why. I just don't think it's good. People wear like bacon costumes, and I know that they're obsessed about it, but I just don't get it.
Oh, goodness. All right. Your favorite TV show right now. What is it?
Favorite TV show right now. Oh, geez. I was just watching I've got a buddy who had a song that was placed in a TV show that the Sci-Fi Network is doing, and the show is called The Magicians.
Oh.
And it's a terrible show. It's a terrible show, but in the process of watching him get his placement in the show, I got hooked on it. So even though it's a terrible show, terrible meaning it's poorly made and probably shouldn't be good, I found myself being entrapped. Now I'm eagerly awaiting every week so I can watch the new episode.
That's hilarious. So when you're not out promoting a record, what do you like to do in your spare time?
I have a motorcycle, and so if I'm going to go enjoy the outdoors, I go ride my motorcycle. I do that pretty often. I love playing golf. So I play a fair amount of golf.
Nice.
And I play a lot of basketball as well. So sports and motorcycle.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, one last thing. What are some things that our listeners could pray about for you? I know you're out on a promo tour right now. The album comes out, but what are some things that we could pray for?
It's always so bad at giving people things to pray for me for. I'm a little bit anxious about the record releasing.
Okay.
So I would like to have some prayer for the anxiety. I think the reason I'm anxious is because I think we barely talked about this, but there's not really any answers. I didn't provide people with an answer. Right. And I'm a little nervous that this is the first time I've really ever done that with a record. There's no solution or here's what happens next. And I would really like for my record to be impactful in people's lives, and I'm a little anxious that it will not be. So
please keep David Dunn in your prayers, and thanks so much for joining us for this Shine.fm Momcast.